This has been obviously a very busy news week in our nation's capital. And certainly today has been very busy in the nation's capital because I guess like this week has seen confirmation hearings. We got RFK, we've got Kash Patel, we've got Tulsi Gabbard, we got some of the real gems of the incoming Trump administration making their case to the American public. But we've also had a sort of the announcement of an executive order by Donald Trump and his new administration that would essentially upend the entire function of the federal government by declaring that all money that has been allocated or grant money that has been allocated by the previous Congress could be just frozen basically by fiat. That's since been walked back. But basically, were it to be taken seriously, the executive order would have covered a cease in funding to Medicaid, SNAP, school meals, WIC, Head Start, child care block grants, Pell Grants, student loans, housing vouchers, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture here. And then today, as Trump and Musk and Doge and everyone begins the work of basically gutting the federal government and privatizing all public services, this nation experiences the worst aviation disaster it's had since 9/11, practically.
If you're Pete Hegseth, it's okay to have a Mark Tower today. It's the first few days of the job, and look what like no one's
expecting too much, no
one would blame you if you had to relax with a couple Mark Towers right now.
And yet another Mark Tower. It was so much fun.
I think it would be better if you're loose.
Well, I mean, also, you guys, it's DEI. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
Look, you should see the guy he has to work with. He's getting peanut butter and jam all over the fucking controls.
Yeah, I actually heard that the guy who was supposed to be doing helicopters that day, he was an otherkin. And he thought he was a dragon and he could fly into the helicopter to stop it. This week, I don't know. We talked a lot about, before the inauguration, how there is a difference in character and tone and tenor, not with Trump or his people, but with the rest of the world against it this time versus last time. And that's because the resistance, which we have pointed out was sort of like a historical aberration that only existed because of a very specific time and place in media at the time. It's not there. And I was very curious to see how all of this would go without that. And there was a lot of fear casting for people who were afraid that Trump would achieve this type of Reagan status where he guts everything but is lionized, because he already did make kind of an incredible comeback, and he has had positive numbers, better numbers than he's ever had in his career. But anyone who is afraid of that, I think this week has kind of dispelled that, because it is the most familiar Trump one pattern that I've ever seen. You do something incredibly unpopular, then you send your bewildered shithead press secretary out there to go, actually, we're not doing that, but we are. And if you don't think we're doing that, you're wrong. But how dare you think we're doing that? So you have an unpopular policy that you annoy everyone with a battery of uncertain takebacks, and no, we didn't take that back. Very, very reminiscent of all the most unpopular Trump policies in its first 90 days, the first time. And now this, a horrible disaster. And then he goes out there and he says, we have a lot of opinions on what happened, and I'm going to say those opinions.
Okay.
The federal government is a land of contrasts. Okay. So the first time, I think he was trying to do big dynamic things with the Muslim ban, and then it proved to be incredibly unpopular, and he really wants to be popular, really badly. And so it got struck down, walked back. I mean, it fell apart. And then my theory is that he used constant turnover as an excuse to be a lame duck. He could just kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
But this time, I think he brought in a whole bunch of people who, a few of them are children. He's doing DEI inclusion for his cabinet. And then like
Gripers have been obsessed with DEI pilots for like years now. Like basically the idea that any like non-white person is flying a plane. This is something that you only know about if you're a griper. So this proves to me that like woke caused the plane crashes. It proved to me that like basically 20-year-olds are running this administration.
yes, and it's not going well. But I think this is another situation where he could have it both ways, where he could get struck down before it like really screws over enough people to create a backlash, just potentially. And then he could say, well, I tried, but these people are
Absolutely.
and then he gets to do that.
Well, and then he can get credit for like rescinding it. And like when the people's Medicaid comes back, he'll be like, Trump gave you your wonderful Medicaid. We took it away, but we gave it back.
And then I like that, like, he's to the point where I think the people he's appointed kind of don't know what's in like executive order power or whatever. I mean, well, I guess without saying, never mind, they don't. But I like the fact that the Supreme Court, like a very conservative Supreme Court, is like, no, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, imagine like these old fucking like goblins crawling out of the sewers, being like, "We can't allow this."
Yeah, because he is saying like, okay, you know the last bits of post-war prosperity, that's all gay. I hate it. Light it on fire.
Hey, you know what's based? The 20s.
Yeah, I mean
The 30s, not so much, but
Well, that's because DEI.
yeah.
I do agree a little bit with the idea that like I don't think I think Trump there is a floor built in with his unpopularity. The floor is like lower than you would like it to be, but I think it's rough. It's about what it was for Bush too.
Yeah, it's so small business owners, like people who aren't affected, people who are not currently like on any kind of public assistance. And you know, pensioners that like, God, I don't know why I'm British right now, but there are people old enough to have like an actual
people waiting
pension.
in the queue.
Yeah. But people who are old enough from an era where they had an actual pension and who also have Social Security, like just being like, I never needed any help at all. All I did was join the military and collect Social Security. Like people who completely dissociate any kind of like public program with that. Like that's still a lot of people. And it's going to take a while for like, you know, the Ski-Doo salesman, like those people to feel any hurt from it. But they will.
Yeah. I think that like the floor is around like Bush 2 numbers, probably a little lower because there are just fewer of those people. Fewer older,
well, he doesn't have a 9/11 either, like which
right.
really galvanized people. And
but the sort of numbers for Bush in like 2008, like high 20s, low 30s. I think like he's always, that's his floor. I think he is lucky in the sense that like a lot of the energy that would have otherwise gone to hating him and, you know, the stuff that like generally made him fuck up the most the first time and caused all like the defensive fuck ups and the personnel turnover and recriminations, that seems to be going towards Elon Musk, who has gone from like Obama type numbers for over a fucking decade to what Trump's numbers were in like 2018.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that like this another thing we talked about with Trump 1 after like he tried these big sweeping things and they got struck down and he failed to repeal Obamacare and only really passed that one big tax cut, that his biggest problem politically, besides like being broadly hated and galvanizing CIA Democrats, was that the administration around 2019 wasn't about anything. And COVID, in fact, probably helped him more than anything because it gave him something to be about. And I think they're running headlong into that problem now.
Yeah. He needs a 9/11. He needs a COVID.
Yeah.
I feel like
even more difficult for him is that their House majority is, it's one bad Boeing flight away. You know?
One thing I want to note about this is, you remember back when Biden was president, and like he had a certain style of like whenever he was called to have to acknowledge some glaring failure of our government and society, he would always like adopt this tone of being like, hey Jack, listen, I want to talk to who's in charge here. We got to sort this. Someone needs to sort this out. But Trump has his own way of responding, and I love this note from Trump on Truth Social today about the plane crash. Trump writes, "The airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It is a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower
Melon was on?
Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? This is a bad situation that looks like it could have been prevented. Not good." I love that, but like what I like about the woke plane crash is that, like, look, to small minded sort of midwit people, this looks like a plane crash, okay? But to seers like myself, who have built up a resistance to psyops and can see through the codes of the matrix, this is not a plane crash. We know what it is. It's a humiliation ritual. And in the coming years, as more planes fall out of the sky, bridges collapse, and another disease ravages the country, and basic goods and services completely fall apart, just know that every time that happens, it's a conspiracy. It's a humiliation ritual. It's a conspiracy being directed at the government, not being run by the government. Conspiracies are now things that people try to do to the government to make Trump look bad, as opposed to 2 weeks ago when they were things that the government were doing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Just on that Trump post, it's so funny to be the president overseeing the worst military civilian air disaster that anybody can remember, and talking about it like your hometown QB missed a wide open wide receiver.
Yeah.
He was wide open. Why didn't he make that throw?
It reminds me of the post that Ninja had when that kicker missed the field goal.
Yeah,
where he's like, if I
yeah.
was a kicker, I'd never miss a field goal because I'd be practicing how to kick all the time.
Well, you know what it was? He was Mark Wahlberging.
We'll get to that, Amber. We'll get to that.
Little preview.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was interesting to see the dual responses from Trump and Vance, because Trump's was, I mean, if the stuff over like the funding freeze gave you some Trump one flashbacks, you would especially get them during the press conference where he says, "Well, we don't know what happened, but we're going to say our opinion now," and also, and also, they fucked up the transportation department so bad, et cetera. It's like the type of thing that like actually did turn off suburbanites the last time before this. But then JD Vance, like the new face of cool national conservatism, was, I guess, his way to spin this is saying that like the traffic controllers, of which there were like 7 guys working the jobs of 30 people because of the brutal austerity that we've instituted, they're stressed out because they have to work with all these furries that all the white people hired.
And then Trump also said, he reassured all Americans that it's totally safe to fly and we have the safest commercial aviation in the world. So it's like, what's going on?
We're still waiting for all the facts, but also here's what happened. And it was terrible, but also it's fine. Just boom, boom, boom.